the way the sushi bar started for the Obon was because Dennis Sukagawa's father, he ran Sakura Gardens on El Camino, and our family was involved. I think Uncle Tom actually designed the Japanese garden and was instrumental in designing it because they had sit-down shoji rooms. So it was pretty authentic, and his whole staff came from Japan. And then Auntie Dorothy worked there a little while too, and then they had access to Nakano-san, Louis Nakano, who was a sushi chef. So they actually built an authentic sushi bar at the Obon. And they had, I think there were 8 seats with a section where the sushi chef actually made the sushi, cooked the rice. And then we all had to, we were all in high school, in the early 70s. I guess I was out of high school. I'm old, okay? Candace, Noriyama's mother, Dorothy Frucci, was the one who actually started the booth. And when they first started, they would take, we all got recruited to be the waitresses. Our cousins, Connie, Wendy Frucci, Carol Frucci, me, Candace. Shirley helped a little, but she was a lot younger, so. But then they tested us to see who could actually help roll the takamaki, and we all failed except for Candace. So she actually would be there rolling sushi, helping Mr. Nakano do that. We couldn't do the other sushi though, because we could never get the rice, do it in one hand, one sweep, and we would be like crushing it, no. And then cooling the rice, it had to be fanned, not stirred and crushed, because you had to see every kernel. It had to be perfect rice. So we failed at that too. So, but we worked, and then, like I said, Uncle Sam would bring fish and help cut it. And I forgot, Mr. Kaida was one of the, and Mr. Nishimura. Mm-hmm. He always helped to cut the sushi. So it was fun, it was different. So we had to, all the cousins had to be waitresses. And we were terrible. Couldn't remember people's orders. Candace said that we didn't write orders down, but thinking back, we had to have a tablet of some kind because there were probably 8 different kinds of sushi that they sold. And it was pretty unusual at that time because the sushi bar, nobody had a sushi bar back then. Nobody knew what sushi was, the general public, except for people who actually went to Japan. So it was different. It was fun, and we were lucky to be able to have the chefs help us. And then Auntie Dorothy always made her saba sushi. And I'm looking for the recipe, which I can't find. But it was just something we did, and we didn't have time to dance because we were always working. And
how did you get the fish?
Rod's Uncle Sam used to be a big fisherman, so I know, and Mr. Satake too. So they would bring fish, and then the rest of the fish they would order through the restaurant. And they had glass cases now, so you could actually see the fish. And we also had a little dining section on the side where we would wait on tables. So I mean, it was more authentic. It was a sushi bar.
Where was that on the temple grounds?
It was, I believe it was right in front of the Reverend's house. So built right in front of the minister's home. One of the things that Mr. Nakano asked us to do was take the nori sheets before they did the sushi to make them really crispy. So they had these little gas portable burners with a long chopstick, and he showed us quickly. Well, we ended up burning all of them because they would crinkle up at the edges, so we got fired from that job too. Failed again, which is why none of us ever went into the restaurant business, I think. But couldn't crisp up the nori. So I vividly remember trying to cool the rice for the sushi bar, and then years and years later, somehow I got into rice cooling for sushi making for the Obon. But it was a huge crew and bigger batches of rice. And Candace was in charge of rice cooling, so she got us all to do that too. We brought in these big fans because the BWA ladies used to do it by hand. And his grandmother was a stickler for perfect rice. So the way these guys would come in, Paul and Glenn Kitasoy, Russell Chan, they're big burly guys, and they would just like smash the rice as we were seasoning it. And all I kept thinking was, Rod's grandmother turning over in her grave because this rice is just being massacred. It should be like cooled like this, so every kernel is perfect. I just thought to myself, oh, she would just die if she saw the way they were doing this rice nowadays. We'd flip it. But there was so much to do. You know, there was no way we were going to get all that done. But, you know, that was just the way things were done back then. Perfectly. Not anymore.
I remember growing up that my dad, Jim Satake, would fish on the bay with all of his temple buddies in the late spring and early summer of every year and try to catch and freeze as much striped bass as possible to serve for Obon. Going out on his boat, the little Gale too, they had a great time enjoying each other's company and working toward a common goal of fundraising for the temple. I don't really remember the sushi bar with the high schoolers being the waitresses, but do remember the transition to making and packaging a sushi combo box with about 7 different kinds of nigiri sushi. It was likely my dad's thought that we could make more for the temple by pre-packaging a set box. As long as we had extra striped bass and tuna for sashimi, we would sell plates of those as well. I remember that my dad recruited a local sushi chef who would spend hours slicing a whole tuna shipped in from Hawaii into sashimi and pieces for nigiri. And of course, being who they were at that time, we could never waste any fabulous tuna, so Sam Sugimoto was always at the ready to make his fabulous tasty poke, which was such a treat and that we served to the volunteers that helped us for Obon. One of the challenges we had when we were first making set boxes of nigiri sushi was making enough consistent balls of sushi rice for the nigiri. We tried lots of techniques. Obviously, the sushi chefs were fabulous at taking just the right amount of delicately flavored rice and shaping it into a perfect consistent form. However, our ladies and our volunteers had a little bit more difficulty in doing that. We tried different things, like we did sushi maker crankers from Japan, and that was excruciatingly slow. But fortunately, we had a secret weapon in Toao, Yokoyama. He was a fabulous engineer and carpenter, and he made these wonderfully handcrafted wooden shapers for sushi, and we were easily able to get as much sushi, perfectly shaped balls for our nigiri sushi set boxes. That was just genius. Over time, nigiri sushi waned a bit in popularity, so Baba Yorita, a Mountain View Buddhist Temple member at that time, had the great idea to have YBA start making spam musubi, and we sold it through the sushi bar booth. Ultimately, that was more popular than the nigiri sushi, so we transitioned to spam musubi, and then a few years later, spam musubi and California roll, and a few years later, spam musubi and chili over rice. In thinking back about all the transitions in the evolution from the sushi bar, I'm amazed at the dedication, talent, and creativity that we have in our Sangha. Not only does change happen, but we at the Mountain View Buddhist Temple are able to adapt and thrive. That is what's truly inspiring, and I'm deeply grateful for all of our wonderful founders and members in our temple and our community who continue to work together for the common good.